In 1971, ODA, an oil exploration company, sent a team of its engineers and geologists to Costa del Sol, Panama, to see if offshore drilling for oil would be feasible. Thankfully for the pristine coast town, it was not, and after 6 months of surveys, core samples, and meteorological studies, ODA called their crew back to New Orleans. John Smith, an engineer with ODA, left behind a broken-hearted 19-year-old girl, Carmen Perez. 2 weeks later, she looked up from her task, cleaning the fish that her father and her brothers brought in, to see a familiar figure walking toward her. She squealed with delight, and John smiled as she ran up to greet him. "I have come to talk to your father," the 31-year-old told the girl. Over dinner, Miguel Perez listened as the American professed his love for Carmen and his desire to provide for her. "You will be taking her back to America?" Miguel asked. "Yes, sir," John said. "I am sorry. I know it will be a hardship on your family to lose her, and I plan to compensate you for this loss." "How do you propose to do that?" Miguel asked. "It would not be a hardship. Carmen's younger brother needed to quit wasting his time playing American baseball with the other children and begin helping out in the family livelihood. At 12 years old, it was high time Eduardo learned the value of hard work. But Miguel was, at heart, a businessman. "I know this is so little. Please do not be insulted," John said, and laid 10 $100 bills on the table in front of Miguel. Carmen, I pressed to a crack in the door, gasped as she saw the exorbitant amount of money her American beau was prepared to pay for her hand in marriage. All of her life, she was the chubby girl, the one the other children teased. When she became a teenager, her few friends did tell her that she was very pretty. It was a shame none would ever notice. At 19 years old, Carmen Perez was 5 feet and 2 inches tall, but tipped the doctor's scale at 240 pounds. When the ODA men descended on their fishing village, many of the girls vied heartily for the attention of the American men with their many dollars. Carmen did not bother to try. They would not look at her twice. When John Smith politely asked her for a dance, he had her heart from the first smile. He had her heart for all eternity when he pressed his lips to hers. "What is wrong with you?" Miguel demanded as she sobbed, broken-hearted. When the bus took the entire ODA task force to the airport, how could she explain to him? How could she tell her father, a hard-working, practical man, that she had dared to fall in love with a black-skinned, black-haired, brown-eyed man from America? Many of the village girls looked on with envy and some with hostility as the Perez family prepared for the wedding, the marriage of their daughter to an American. When the news that the American had paid $1,000 to Miguel Perez, there was nearly a riot in Costa del Sol. The militia patrolled the streets to keep the peace until after the wedding. Carmen Smith could not stop gaping at the large airplane that would carry them to America. Once inside the large contraption, she was overwhelmed at the luxury. The outfits the women wore were a little scandalous, but perhaps that was how the women of America dressed, with no regard to the display of their flesh. John put her next to the window, so that she could look out and see the world as they flew. The plane began to taxi down the runway at a dizzying speed, and Carmen screamed as she saw the ground suddenly rush away from them, the plane lifting up into the sky. John put his arm over her shoulder, and she looked into his smiling blue eyes and knew that, even if the airplane plummeted to the earth, John Smith would protect her. New Orleans International Airport also overwhelmed her, but John Smith steered them quickly to the luggage carousel and took their baggage in hand. He negotiated the confusing melee with no trouble and brought them outside. The expanse of the parking lot seemed endless to her, and she was exhausted by the time he located his 1970 Pontiac Bonneville. "Are you a millionaire?" she asked him, incredulous, as she settled into the plush interior of the American automobile. "No, no, my love," he laughed. "All Americans live like this. Well, most of them do." The small ranch-style house John Smith lived in was further proof to her that John Smith was far too modest about his wealth. She trembled, excited and afraid, when her husband showed her their room, the bed that they would be sharing. Her apprehension grew as he began to remove his madras shirt and khaki trousers. He smiled reassuringly at her, and she tried to return his smile. His kisses distracted her, his touches excited her, and she gasped, giggled and cooed as she undressed her. The tall man laid his young bride on the bed and then finished undressing himself. She looked at his naked body and fought the urge to giggle. His muscular arms looked like branches, his muscular legs looked like a strong trunk, but his smaller manhood just looked out of place. "Tonight, we will make you a woman," he whispered in her ear. Her hymen was quite strong, and she sobbed as he forced his way into her. He tenderly kissed her tears away and promised her that it would not hurt the next time they made love. What a funny way of putting it. He hurt her tremendously, but he called it making love. Back in the Panama, Miguel Perez found that being wealthy could be very unhealthy. Twice now, he'd had to fend off masked intruders that were looking for his money. He also found that he did miss Carmen. Almost daily, Eduardo would abandon his chores and run off to play baseball with his friends. Wah wah, Miguel taunted the 12-year-old boy. I am big baby, I want to play, and I don't want to work. Shut up, Eduardo said and received a slap to his face. You will mind your father, Miguel said and slapped the boy again. Carmen luxuriated in the large bathtub and luxuriated under the ministrations of her husband. He used a perfumed soap on a very soft cloth and lovingly scrubbed every square inch of her body. Any sexual euphoria vanished when she looked into the full-length mirror on the bathroom door. What she saw disgusted her. A fat blob, large breasts and large belly hanging down. Her husband's protestations that she was beautiful did little to lift her spirits. She resolved then and there to do something about it. She cut out all the sweet things that she loved to eat. And John had a large pantry just full of the sweets she loved. She also began to exercise. She made him drive her around the block so that she could see how far it would be before she reached their house again. The first few weeks, once around the block, left her dazed, wheezing and gasping. The winter months did bring some relief to the daunting humidity, but by the time winter rolled around, Carmen had improved her walking to a slight jog and had increased it to 5 times around the block. By the time summer rolled around again, Carmen was running around the small block a total of 25 times before slowing to a jog for another 5 rounds. At the church she and John attended, she met other Spanish-speaking women and formed friendships with them. 2 of them, Rosita and Lynn, were militant feminists and openly gay. Over and over, they berated Carmen for her marriage, for being married to an older man, for not having a job, not earning her own money. By summer's end, Carmen weighed 134 pounds. Men, and a few women, started noticing her, started greeting her as she ran past their houses. Her new, sexy figure, her new ideology, and her new appetite for sex were the source of many arguments in the Smith home. John felt quite threatened by the very attractive young lady in his home. It was one thing to be married to a fat blob that was completely dependent on him. Quite another thing indeed to be married to a very attractive, self-assured, and demanding 20-year-old feminist. Her request for sexual attention had turned into demands for sexual gratification. When he failed to satisfy her, she was quite vocal about her disapproval. Jose, Ricardo, and Eduardo put the paper sacks they'd cut eye slits into over their heads. Silently, they approached Miguel's bedroom. Miguel lay in his bed, snoring drunkenly. The liter of tequila that Jose had given to him lay, empty, on the floor. At a signal, the 3 brothers raised their clubs, fashioned out of discarded boat oars, and began striking the sleeping form. When they were sure he had breathed his last, they began to search the house. They found 7 of the $100 bills tucked away in the family Bible. Where are the other 3 bills? Ricardo asked. How should I know? Jose asked. He may have spent it. Or you already pocketed it, Eduardo accused. Jose raised his club and struck the boy. Ricardo, believing Jose's lashing out to be a sign of his guilt, struck Jose with his own bloody club. None that looked at Ricardo would believe him to be anything but the grieving son and brother. All in Costa del Sol vowed they would find the cowardly villains that killed 3 in one family. And for what? They asked one another. For a few American dollars? Can those American dollars save their souls when they perish? No, never. They will rot in hell. Carmen grieved over the loss of her father and 2 of her 3 brothers. Instead of turning to her husband for solace and strength, she turned away from him. If he had not brought her here to this strange country, she may have been able to prevent the murder of her family. Her disdain towards her husband was going to take her down a very dark alley. A few days later, "Hello," Greg Beckett smiled as Carmen jogged past his house. "Hello," she smiled back. Greg was an attractive young man who often cut his grass without a shirt on. More than once, when Carmen endured John's clumsy attempts at making love, she imagined it was the younger, more attractive Greg that was plunging in and out of her. "Looking kind of hot there. I'll have a beer waiting for you next time you come around," Greg offered. She slowed to a brisk walk on her next go-around and slowed to a steady walk as she approached the smiling Greg. "Thank you," she smiled and accepted the cold bottle. "Whoa, whoa, easy there." Greg laughed as she drank deeply of the cold beverage. "That's not water, you know." She hummed happily to herself as she fixed their dinner. Even as she dieted, she still enjoyed the simple art of cooking and preparing a meal. "What are you so happy about?" John asked suspiciously. "Happiness," humming were not the usual greetings he got when he returned home from work. "Nothing, can I be happy?" she asked him, giggling slightly. She fought down the urge to giggle again as he undressed in their bedroom. Greg's was easily twice the size of John's. He was also much more skilled than John when it came to how to use his tool. Within minutes, Carmen's newfound hatred towards her husband took over, and John was hearing an earful of how inept he was at satisfying his wife. For months later, the telltale signs were there. Her period, which had never been regular, was several weeks late. Her breasts, still quite large despite her remarkable weight loss, were very tender. The nausea in the morning confirmed it as far as she was concerned, but John insisted that she see a doctor to be sure. "Great, just great," she complained when the doctor confirmed her fears. "Now I will be all fat and ugly again." "No, no, my love," an ecstatic John hastened to assure her. "Pregnant women are beautiful." "Go to hell, John Smith," Carmen said bitterly. 3 days later, John felt a little ill, a little warm, so he told his supervisor he was going home early. "Yeah, John, you do look a little peaked," his boss agreed. "See you tomorrow." As he drove toward their home, he saw his wife, out on her daily run. She slowed to a brisk walk, and he was about to tap the horn to alert her of his presence when she veered up Greg Beckett's driveway and opened the front door of Greg's house. 2 hours later, slightly drunk and fully satisfied, Carmen Smith let herself into her home. "Had fun?" John asked her. She screamed, startled. "What are you doing here?" she shrilled. In answer, he gripped the front of her cotton shorts and gave a hearty jerk. The material ripped easily, bearing her to his gaze. No panties, her womanhood swollen, red, and Greg's semen still oozed from her. "Is it mine?" John asked. "The baby, is it even mine? With that tiny stick you hang between your legs, I doubt if you are man enough to father a child," she sneered. For John, it was a loss of his manhood. A man can live without food, love, or money. He cannot live without his pride. His heart, his soul, and his pride, all crushed. A week later, Carmen played the part of grieving widow at the funeral and feigned confusion over why John Smith would put his shotgun into his mouth and end his life. Greg Beckett did not want a wife, and certainly did not want a wife and a child. Screwing her was fine. When they were finished screwing, she'd go home. One night, Carmen wanted to stay and cuddle when Greg made it clear he had other women to attend to. You do not love me?" she asked, truly shocked, dumbfounded. "Love you," he laughed. "Baby, you're all fun and games, dig? Love? No, I don't love you. It's just plain old sex. You were a horny woman and I am a horny man. We just took care of business." For a brief moment, she truly regretted driving John to the grave. He may have been an older man, a not very well-endowed man, but he was a loving man and a good man. "I am a stupid woman," she agreed, "but I am not stupid enough to ever return here." "No loss that," he laughed. "Easy enough to find another Mexican bitch." "I am not Mexican," she hissed, disgusted that he would even think that. "I am Panamanian." "Same difference," he laughed again. Miguel Xavier Smith was born May 27, 1973. One look told Carmen that John Smith was the father. Xavier had John's eyes. John's eyes had been big, brown orbs, whereas Greg's were a blue. His hair was also black. Greg's hair was blonde. Above all, he had his father's skin color. He was a whiny, sickly baby who needed constant attention. Carmen was both overwhelmed and angry and retreated to the bottle. Greg had gotten her hooked on beer, but soon after the birth of Xavier, she found that beer wasn't enough and started on vodka. Before Xavier's first birthday, Carmen was guzzling a fifth of vodka a day. He spent many hours in his crib, hungry and in his own filth. Mother too drunk to crawl to him, too drunk to care for him. Being drunk did not stop her from finding a parade of men to fill all her holes. Each drunken contact, she was sure, would be the one. The right man to relieve her of the squalor and misery that her life had become. She did not bother looking into a mirror because her clothing told her the story. She was again becoming the fat blob she was when John Smith had carried her to America. Each night, she would resolve to begin exercising again on the following morning. On the following morning, her first action was to pour herself a large glass of vodka and orange juice, and her resolve to seize control of her life would melt faster than the ice cubes in her drink. One night, at Fantastic Lounge, she met Mickey, a very large biker. He bought her a few drinks, told her a few jokes, then put her on the back of his hog and drove straight to Carmen's place. What he did was unknown, but the young man Carmen had hired to babysit Xavier took one look at Mickey and ran. He was covered in red and a smile sinister enough to send a chill down their spine. The young man ran and never talked to anyone, not even the cops, who were called 4 days later, when there was a foul stench coming from the Smiths' home. Young Miguel was lucky to have water near him. He somehow lived. Miguel Xavier Smith bounced from one foster home to another in the greater New Orleans area. Like his mother, he found solace and comfort in food. He certainly found no solace or comfort in the machinery of the foster care system. To nearly all of the families, he was a source of income. Beyond that, he was a bother, a nuisance. When he was in his early teens, he stood at 5 feet 9 inches and weighed nearly 300 pounds. "Hey fat shit," Elliot Johnson taunted. "You're fat and your mama was a fat hooker and your daddy was a fat cuck." Mrs. Johnson, if she heard her son, ignored him. She was a shrill woman that doted on her precious angel and would hear no ill words about him. Her husband had tired of competing with his son for his wife's attentions and so left the family. The income from Xavier and Benita was her only source of income. She could not file for divorce, alimony, and child support. If the foster care system found out that she was a single woman, they would remove Xavier and Benita from her care. "Your mom sucked her way to her grave, and so did your daddy," Elliot went on. "What did you do to my baby?" Mrs. Johnson screamed, as Elliot lay unconscious on the floor, left eye already beginning to purple. She reached out to slap the ungrateful little prick. He struck her twice before she knew what had happened. She ended up with 3 teeth stuck in her lower lip and a dislocated jaw. She regretted calling Mrs. Bonham faux help. An investigation revealed that there was no Mr. Johnson on the premises. Both Xavier and Benita were removed from the Johnson household, thus removing Mrs. Johnson's source of income. Also, without the distraction of unruly foster children, Mrs. Johnson was left to face the ugly truth. Her child was a loud, disrespectful brat. Years later, Miguel was now a young man. "Harder, damn it!" Max screamed. "You weakling, harder!" Xavier grunted and hefted the 300-pound weights. "Hold it, let it go and I'll kick the shit out of you," Max screamed in Xavier's ear. Sweat dripped off of Xavier's face and his arms were beginning to shake from the strain of holding the bar, but he dared not let it go. Max would make good his promise. "Put the goddamned weights up, weak shit," Max sneered. "As soon as you change your tampon, give me 10 laps around." 10 laps around the perimeter of the gym was 1 mile exactly, and Xavier knew that Max did not mean to walk that mile. He meant for Xavier to run it, and run it at full speed. The 19-year-old college freshman got to his feet and started running as hard as he could. "God damned!" Max screamed at him as he passed him. "Did I say skip? Run, chicken, run." He pushed himself harder, and still he could not catch up with the 56-year-old trainer. "You are pathetic," Max screamed as he passed the kid again. "Your first match is in 5 days," Max reminded him as they stood in the shower. "5 days from now, you are going to get the shit kicked out of you unless you can pick up the pace, chicken." He got dressed and grabbed his textbooks from his locker. "Bye, little girl," Max sneered. "Have fun in school today. Don't let any of the big boys take your lunch money again." Donna smiled as the handsome boy sat down next to her in their sociology class. She could tell that he liked her, but he was far too shy to simply look over and ask her out. "Hey Donna, what is up?" Brad Litzinger smiled knowingly. "Oh, hey Brad," she giggled. "Listen, you doing anything tonight?" Brad asked. She looked over at Xavier. His ears were red as he eavesdropped in on their conversation. "No, why?" she giggled. "What did you have in mind?" "You know," he laughed and walked off. "I don't even know why the hell I'm here," Max grumbled as they sat in the dressing room. "You ain't got a shot in hell." 3 minutes, Joe said from the doorway. "Oh, that's right. They want somebody to put the bandages on your little boo-boos," Max said as Xavier began to pump his arms and jog in place, getting his heart rate up. Dwight Richards sat in the opponent's corner, smiled as Xavier Smith and his trainer entered the ring. Xavier looked nervous to the kid, as well he should. This was Dwight's 5th semi-professional fight, and it was only Xavier's first. Dwight had won all 4 of his previous fights, 3 with knockouts. Xavier had not expected to be this nervous. He'd been in hundreds of fights ever since knocking Elliot Johnson out. This, however, was the first one that was on a semi-professional level and against someone else that had trained to fight. The combatants were introduced, the rules given, then they were sent to their corners to wait for the bell. "Throw the first punch," Max ordered. "Don't be a lady and wait for him. Get your hands in there and throw the first punch." The bell rang and Xavier charged into Dwight Richards. By the 3rd round, Dwight's trainer was considering throwing in the towel. Dwight's face was nearly unrecognizable. "What the hell are you doing in there?" Max screamed in Xavier's ear. Quit kissing him and let's go home. Dwight's trainer tossed the towel into the ring, ending the fight before the bell could ring for the fourth round. The fight had given him some confidence. He walked into the classroom, saw the pretty co-ed and walked over to her. Even though he was looking at her, he was actually looking at a spot on the desk just over her shoulder, distracting himself from her blonde beauty so that he wouldn't lose his nerve. Hey, you want to go and get some Chinese or something? Xavier asked Donna. Sure, she giggled and gave him her phone number. He borrowed Max's car and picked her up at her parents' apartment. She was sucking him before he had the car out of the parking lot. After dinner, she pulled him into the back seat of the car and stripped completely nude. Oh yeah, baby, she laughed as she straddled him. Do it hard and fast. Do me good, baby. Xavier was in love. It was his first time with anything but his hand, and it felt great. Rumors began to reach Xavier's ears that Donna was cheating around on him. She denied it, of course, but he began to wonder. Some nights she wasn't available, and her parents couldn't tell him where she was or who she was with. God damn it, get your mind out of her panties. Max screamed at him. The bell for round 2 rang and Xavier got to his feet. Both Max and his opponent could tell that Xavier wasn't anywhere in the ring. He was going through the motions, but wasn't paying attention. Deserved it, Max spat. Stupid deserves to be a big loser. How does it feel, loser? Like being a loser? 'Cause that's what you are, a big loser. It had taken all 12 rounds, and his opponent had won on points, but Xavier knew his trainer was right. Whether he lost by points or by a knockout, it was still a loss and losing didn't feel very good. Donna was talking very excitedly about the party at the Sigma Phi Iota frat house. You are going, right? She hugged Xavier. They're going to have this live band there and all. You have to go. He dressed in his khakis and a pullover sweater and walked to the frat house. The music was unbearably loud and not very good, but the majority of the party attendees were so drunk it didn't matter. There was no sign of Donna anywhere, so Xavier walked around, nodding and greeting to a few acquaintances. He had no friends, no one he felt close to, other than Donna. Hey, where's the bathroom? He asked Brad Litzinger, one of the frat boys. Upstairs, second door on the left, I think, Brad yelled back. He walked up the stairs and saw 2 frat boys exit the second door on the left, congratulating each other. Xavier smirked to himself as they avoided eye contact with him. He opened the second door on the left and made eye contact with Donna. One frat boy was ramming her from behind while 3 more waited their turn. Hey, she laughed drunkenly. You made it. He closed the door, found the bathroom, and emptied both his bladder and his stomach. Thankfully, the band decided to take a break. Find everything okay? Brad laughed at him. Xavier said, and rushed to the front door of the frat house. Bye, loser. Brad laughed. Xavier ignored him and continued toward the door. What a loser, Brad laughed to one of his friends. Yeah, Xavier asked him. Think I'm a loser, huh? No, bitch, I know you're a loser, Brad laughed. Yeah, you are right, Xavier smirked. Think you can go a couple of rounds with me? I mean, since I a loser and all. Dude, get hell out of here. Brad laughed. I'd kill you. Brad Litzinger was 6'6" and weighed 240 pounds. He was a first-string nose tackle. Looking at Xavier, he knew he'd have absolutely no trouble knocking the boy down. Then let's go, bitch, Xavier said. Screw off, loser. Before you get hurt, Brad sneered. I mean, you want to do this before you blow me, or after? Xavier asked. A few of his buddies jeered and Brad lost his smile. Want to take that back while you can, Smith? Brad asked. Oh, I'm really sorry, Xavier smiled. You didn't want anyone to know you're a big scum sucker? Brad threw a punch, which Xavier easily blocked. Brad was stunned when Xavier's punch loosened one of his teeth. Plain lucky, he lisped and threw another punch. His jaw shattered at Xavier's second punch. 3 of his ribs broke at Xavier's third and fourth punch. There was no fifth punch. Xavier wouldn't hit a man when he was down. Cool, real cool, Xavier. Donna sneered as she stood, hands on hips, glaring at him. Other students that were filing into the sociology class gave them their undivided attention. What the hell are you mad about? Xavier asked her. Shit, she spat. Did you have to mess Brad all up and shit? Just 'cause I was screwing around? No, I didn't have to mess Brad all up 'cause you were screwing around, Xavier said. I busted him up because I felt like busting him up. You being a bitch has nothing to do with it. You knew what I am, she hissed. You knew what I was before we even started dating. Litzinger, Coach shook his head. It never ever occurred to you to stop and think, why is this guy, half my size, not afraid of me? Brad mumbled something, But Coach wasn't really listening. Lit singer, that tells me that you are a dumbass, Coach said. And there is no room on my team for a dumbass. Brad mumbled something, protesting. Coach shook his head and pointed to the door of his office. Bye, lit singer, Coach said. Get your stuff out of your locker. Hey, scumsucker, a guy sneered. Xavier smiled. He'd been expecting the frat boys of Sigma Phi Iota to retaliate. News of Brad Litzinger's being removed from the football team had traveled very quickly. News of Brad's leaving campus traveled almost as quickly. Donna had screamed at him about it, but all he did was flip her the finger. Hey, scumsucker, come for some man juice, Xavier smiled. Ain't going to be smiling much longer, the boy sneered as 4 more frat boys joined him. Oh, I think I will. Xavier smiled and pulled Max's 9mm pistol from his pants pocket. Hey, one of the boys protested. It worth dying for? Xavier asked and pointed the gun at the biggest one of the now cowering boys. 2 years down the line, Xavier was training with Max. Goddamn, you stupid chicken, Max screamed. I am 58 years old. 58 years old, and I'm still beating the shit out of you, you chicken. The man was still running laps around the gym faster, because Xavier was letting him beat him. The stroke had left Max with a bit of slurred speech now, but with Xavier's loving help, the man was gaining strength daily. What are you going to do, bitch? Max screamed. He's going to beat the shit out of you. And what are you going to do about it? Cry. The Georgia World Convention Center had the marquee announcing the upcoming Saturday night WBO heavyweight contest. Xavier and Max flew in on Wednesday night to get acclimated to the altitude. Man, you gotta go to Big Daddy's, the guy staying in the hotel room next to Xavier's praised. Oh, Xavier asked politely. Yeah, bitches take everything off, man, the guy laughed. I ain't seen that much glory holes in my life. And these ain't all tired out mommies. These are grade A meat. Little one I had rubbing up and down on me said she was a freshman over at Georgia Tech. No shit, huh? Xavier said. Yeah, Big Daddy's, don't forget it, the guy said and disappeared into his room. What the hell, huh? Max said, spittle spraying. Nice young women, huh? Fine, Max, we'll go, Xavier laughed. But if Emily asks me, I'm telling her it was all your idea. She ain't going to ask, and if she does, so what? Max said, affecting a bravado he did not feel. Xavier smiled. Max's wife, Emily, ran their household with an iron fist. Tough as nails in the gym, profane at ringside, Max was a meek, mild-mannered mouse at home. Big Daddy's was a 3-block walk from the hotel, so the 2 men went after eating at a local steakhouse. Good evening, gentlemen, a burly bouncer greeted them, and then smiled widely. Ah, hell yeah. You Xavier Smith, ain't you? Yes, I am, Xavier smiled. Man, I dropped $1,000 on you to take Washington in the 8th round, the man laughed. And you go on and knock his butt out in the 4th. Well, shit, if you told me. I'd taken it easy on him the first 7 rounds, Xavier smiled. I heard that, the bouncer laughed. I heard that. You'll have yourselves a good time in there. Got tickets to the fight Saturday night? Max asked the bouncer. Nah, man. Them tickets already up to $200 for all the way in the back. Know what I'm saying, the bouncer said. He jabbed a finger playfully in Xavier's chest. And I done learned my lesson with you, man. I ain't betting no more on them fights. He said. Here you go, bring a buddy, Max said, and handed the bouncer 2 tickets for the 4th row. Hey, the bouncer yelled out to the manager. Put these 2 in the hot box. Xavier was bored. Max was having a great time ogling the 19- and 20-year-old strippers, guzzling the complimentary champagne and stuffing dollar bills into the girls' garters. Hey, you don't look like you're all too happy, a woman laughed into Xavier's ear. No, he lied. I'm fine, just tired, that's all. Eddie says you're some kind of athlete, the girl smiled. You do look like you're in pretty good shape. Yeah, he smiled. You look pretty fit too. Oh, I am, she laughed. In fact, I bet I can do something you can't. Honey, he smiled. I'll bet there's a lot of things you can do that I can't. You know what I mean, she laughed and slapped his arm playfully. But here, I'll show you. Watch. She pulled the cork out of the champagne bottle and dropped it onto the table in front of Xavier. Then she got on top of the table and squatted down. You watching? She asked, needlessly. Aha, Xavier said, and watched the long-legged brunette squat down over the champagne cork. She picked the cork up with her vaginal muscles and raised herself up slightly. Put the bottle on the table, she ordered, and Xavier did. She squatted down over the bottle's mouth, taking it into her. She bounced up and down a couple of times. then suddenly stood up, leaving the bottle still on the table. "Ta-da!" She laughed and jumped down from the table. Xavier looked and smiled widely. The cork was back in the mouth of the bottle. It was in there loosely, but it was in there. "Now, that takes muscles," she laughed, and playfully pinched his bicep. "Think you can do that?" "No, honey, I don't think I can do that," he smiled. "So, what's your name?" she asked as she rubbed her 39 double D breasts against his back, leaning over and whispering in his ear. "Xavier, it's Xavier Smith," he said. "Mine's Bucky Kent," she said and lightly sucked on his earlobe. "Bucky?" he asked, frowning. "Yeah, well, my real name's Linda. Linda Luce." She smiled and switched sides so she was whispering into his other ear. "But you know, you're supposed to take your pet's name and the name of the street you lived on, and that's your porn name." "So, your cat's name was Bucky?" he asked. "Who the hell said it was a cat?" she asked in a surly tone. "Cats are useless animals. Any animal that acts like it's doing you a favor for eating your food has some problems." "So, it was a dog, I take it?" he asked. "Yeah, well, really, it was my older brother's dog," she agreed and swiveled around him, looking into his eyes. "You got nice eyes." Brother was a stupid. My dog's name was Buster, but a dancer named Buster just didn't sound like it'd go over all that hot, you know? "So, Bucky Kin," Xavier smiled and slid a $20 bill into her garter. "Kent," she corrected. "Bucky Kent. I grew up on Kent Street, in Metairie, Louisiana." "No shit," he laughed. "Yeah, shithole suburb right outside of New Orleans," she said. "Honey, I know right where Metairie is. I live in Kenner," he smiled. "Yeah," she smiled. In the bad lighting, Xavier did not notice that the smile never reached Linda's eyes. A couple of the dancers from Big Daddy's did go to the fight. Max had given out a total of 20 tickets to the girls that night. Eddie, the bouncer, sold his tickets for $800 apiece. "Shit, man. Fights on television. Know what I'm saying?" he laughed. The girls screamed and hooted and cheered as Xavier and Max made their way to the ring, and Max smiled widely at them. "Fights on TV," Xavier smiled. "Better hope Emily's not watching." "Ah shit, Emily," Max sneered, but quit smiling at the dancers. Bucky screamed and cheered, watching the fight on the plasma screen television at Big Daddy's. She'd sold her ticket for $1,200. Max had given her a ringside seat. "Your little hot bum ain't here," Max commented, looking at the large black guy that was sitting in the seat. "Guess she knew you were going to get your teeth kicked in." "Uh-huh," Xavier agreed. Bucky jumped down and ordered a Long Island iced tea and sat down to watch the fight. "What the hell you doing?" Marcus screamed at her. "You ain't on a break." "Watching my man get ready kick some butt," she screamed back and pointed to the screen. "Soon as it's over, get your butt back to work," Marcus sullenly agreed. She was back to work in less than 5 minutes. Xavier knocked the man out in the second round. As Xavier and Max left the ring, the commentators made a few comments about all the attractive women from the fourth row that swarmed around Xavier Smith. "Well, I tell you, Frank," Ben said, "if I had all them women in my fan club, I'd get into the ring." "Uh-huh," Frank laughed. "Ben, there's not a real big fan club for dead men." Frank Kegel, telling it like it is. Ben smiled at the camera. "We'll be back after these messages." Yeah, please send her up," Xavier smiled and said. "He's in room 1441, the clerk told Bucky. "Thank you," she smiled and sauntered to the elevators, knowing full and well the clerk's eyes were glued to her shorts, her long legs and the two crescents of her hips peeking out. "Hi," he smiled as she came into the room. "Fantastic fight," Bucky praised. "Yeah, well," he smiled. She looked good in just a sports bra and shorts. Her long brown hair was done up in a ponytail, making her look younger than her 22 years. Her 4-inch heels made her long legs look even longer and made her 2 inches taller than him. "So, you up to screwing or what?" she asked. "Damn, Bucky, why don't you just come out and say it, huh?" Xavier said, shocked at her blunt attitude. "Hey, why beat around the bush?" She laughed and unzipped her shorts. "Remember?" she asked, leaning very close to him. "I don't even have a bush. I shave it." Max hated flying, and it was taking a toll on the 71-year-old. Xavier had begged with him to move to Atlanta and had even bought him a house, but Emily would not leave Kenner and their 3 children and 8 grandchildren. And with her oldest grandchild getting ready to have a great-grandchild, she was adamant. They would not be leaving Kenner. Ever. In the past few years, Xavier had begun to lose a steady stream of fights. He'd gone from a record of 37 wins for losses to a record of 42 wins, 9 losses, and 1 draw. He wouldn't admit it, not out loud, but it was the unhealthy lifestyle he and Bucky maintained. She liked to party, liked the recreational drugs. He refused to put any drugs into his system, but did, on occasion, drink a little too much. She liked to stay out late, liked to hit the nightclubs and dance. If he weren't up to a night of dancing, she would go on her own. When she went on her own, she would come home with a mysterious little smirk on her lips. That mysterious little smirk drove Xavier crazy. To avoid seeing that little smirk, he went out with her most nights. "Don't know why the hell I'm here," Max bitched and griped. His second stroke had completely paralyzed the left side of his body. His speech was nearly indecipherable, except for the profanities, and he walked with a cockeyed gait, dragging his left side behind him. "You are a chicken and will always be a chicken," Max went on. "Fight like a chicken and lose like a chicken. Why am I here? Need someone to change your panty liner, chicken? That why I'm here." Xavier smiled. It felt good to have his trainer, his best friend, back by his side. "Bye," Bucky said cheerfully. "You boys have fun." "Where are you going?" Xavier asked. "Don't know," she cheerfully said. "Find out when I get there." "Hey, do you have to go?" he asked, concerned. "Max just got here, for Christ's sake." "So," she laughed, "he ain't here to see me." She came home at 4 o'clock that morning, large breasts adorned with a couple of hickeys, mysterious little smile on her lips. "Shit, Bucky," he bellowed. "No more. You hear? No more." "Screw you," she laughed. "What you going to do about it?" "No more," he yelled, enraged. "Your credit cards? Gone. That fancy little car? Gone. This house? Gone." "Screw you," she said, mysterious little smile gone. "My lawyer says I get half this shit, scumsucker." "You got a lawyer?" he screamed. Bucky's lawyer came to the house at 10 o'clock that morning and personally handed Miguel Xavier Smith the petition for divorce. "You got 24 hours to vacate the premises," he smiled. Xavier moved a few of his clothes into the house that he'd bought for Max. Xavier threw himself full force into training for the upcoming match. Even the news that her lawyer was now living in his house with his wife did not distract him from his training. "Hey, Xavier!" The older man smiled as Xavier pounded the heavy bag. "Yeah?" Xavier asked, but did not pause his frenzied punching. "Hey, just letting you know, you going to throw this one?" the man said and waited. "Yeah?" Xavier asked, still pounding the bag. "Why would I do that?" "You like breathing?" the man asked. "Still doesn't answer my question," Xavier said. Your pretty little wife, you going to find breathing real hard to do. That answer your question?" the man said, smile gone. "Screw off, shithead," Xavier said. "That answers your question? Look, big guy, throw this one in the 5th round, or you and your pretty little wife wind up dead. Got it?" Nikita Slovak told him and walked away. "So, what you going to do?" Max asked Xavier when Xavier told him what Nikita Slovak had told him. "Russian mob's pretty big here, though no one even knows about it," Xavier said thoughtfully. "So, what you going to do?" Max asked again. "Man, I don't care about me, and damn sure don't care about Bucky," Xavier said. "But suppose they go after you? Or Emily?" "Shit," Max laughed, a mirthless laugh. "Emily's kill them scum suckers. And me? Don't worry about me. I can take care of myself fine. And they said anything about Emily or me anyway?" "No," Xavier said. "He didn't say anything about you." Garland Louviere was being touted as the French connection. The media was swarming all over the good-looking Cajun from Baylor Lake, Louisiana, as he prepared for the upcoming match. At 23, he'd not lost a single match yet, and most of his matches did not go beyond the 6th round. He was going up against Xavier Smith, the former WBO heavyweight champion, in his bid to becoming the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. He smiled as Nikita Slovak entered the hotel suite. Nikita narrowed his eyes at the petite redhead that was sucking Garland's tool. "I thought women weakened the legs," he commented. "That's an old wives' tale," Garland laughed. "Do you mind?" Nikita asked. "I want to talk to you." Fine, Garland laughed again and lightly slapped the redhead on her head. "Stop, bitch." "Hey," she protested. "I ain't a bitch." "You sure?" Garland asked. "I'm pretty sure you are. You suck like one." She ran from the room crying, and Garland shrugged his shoulders and tucked his meat back into his pants. "He has agreed to throw the fight," Nikita started off. "I don't need him to agree to throw the fight," Garland sneered. "No, but you need him to agree to throw it in the 5th round," Nikita said. "Understand? You will go until the 5th round. If it ends any sooner..." "Fine," Garland said. He knew better than to argue with the man. They'd been financing his training from day one. He also knew they were thinking ahead. If it looked like he had struggled against a washed-up Xavier Smith, the odds makers would give the next fight even higher odds. Could you just wait until after the fight? Xavier asked Bucky. Wait, it's in 21 more days. Just wait. Why is it always what you want? Huh, she peevishly said. Because I'm the one makes the money in this family, he said. Well, too bad. Robert's already going down to file the petition, she said and hung up. Robert Scott liked the sporty little Mercedes. Being the lawyer of Xavier Smith's wife had its privileges. Her car handled so much better than his 20-year-old Buick. He pulled up to the parking deck of the Fulton courthouse and parked in a secluded corner. He opened the door and was stunned by a punch in his face. Before he could react, before he could close the door, the masked man punched him a second time. When he came to, his briefcase and laptop computer were gone. He reached for his cell phone and discovered that two had been taken. Shaking his head, trying to clear it, he tried to remember where he was and why he was there. Finally resigning himself to the amnesia, he reached for the keys and discovered that they too had been taken. Bucky drove Xavier's Porsche like she was on the Lemons track. She reached the courthouse parking deck and gave Robert the spare keys for the Mercedes. If Robert had hoped for sympathy, after all, he had just been mugged. Bucky Smith was not the person to ask for sympathy. With only a warning to be careful with her car, she was back in the high-performance vehicle and was gone. The media remembered that there was another contestant in the Louviere-Smith bout and descended on him and descended on Bucky. Yeah, I'm staying here, training, without the distraction of my wife, Xavier said. Kind of sucks, being away from her, but this is a serious fight. I'm already 35, and Garland's only what? 23 or something? He's a true professional. Bucky smiled and posed for the cameras. He's training, doing all the right stuff. My money's on my man. He's going to win this one. She preened and posed and giggled for the cameras and flirted outrageously with the handsome sports announcer the moment the cameras were turned off. Robert watched and felt a sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach. At first it had been nothing but fun and games, screwing Bucky Smith while helping her prepare for a divorce. But the more he was with her, the more he hoped it was a permanent lifestyle. He loved the constant need for sex and the constant stream of coke and the unbelievable perks of her, of Xavier's immense wealth. Faster! Max screamed, spittle flying everywhere. God damn it! Emily can do it faster than you. And she can do it while holding 2 grandchildren in her arms. What in the hell is wrong with you? Xavier kept pushing and pushing. Max kept screaming and cursing. Looking good, Smith. Looking good, Eddie, said as Xavier strained with the free weights. Hey, Eddie, right? Xavier said. Yeah, shit, you remembered my name, Eddie laughed. Course I do, Xavier said, and reached out to shake the man's hand. Eddie ignored the outstretched hand, even though he kept smiling. Nikita sent me, told me to remind you. 5th round, Eddie said. Oh, okay, Xavier said. Take a message back for me? Sure, my man. What you got? Eddie asked. When Eddie came to, Xavier smiled at him and said, Tell Nikita next time he wants to tell me something. Don't send no little chicken, come tell me himself. Nikita Slovak scowled deeply when Eddie relayed the message. I am not playing games with this man, he thundered. Want me to go over there? Marcus asked, reaching for his 9mm. Oh, Nikita sneered. You would kill him before the fight? Marcus put the gun back into the shoulder holster. No, but you kill him after the fight, Nikita said. Even if he does throw it in the 5th? Eddie asked. Sure, Nikita shrugged. What we need with him after that? Robert Scott morosely sat and watched the 70-inch plasma screen television. He had the surround sound system cranked up pretty loud, drowning out the thought of Bucky and Bobby having sex. Bucky was a quite vocal lover and seemed to delight in making sure that Robert could hear her and Bobby. Bobby Bro was just a small-town sports announcer for a backwater town in Louisiana, following Garland Louviere's career, but he was good-looking in a bland sort of way. He had aspirations of greatness, and having the wife of a famous prizefighter would certainly help him in his quest for network television. Garland Louviere noticed the long-legged brunette standing by Bobby's side and gave her his winning smile. Robert Scott actually smiled when ESPN showed Garland Louviere training. Quite visible was a smiling, posing Bucky Smith. In the background was an unhappy-looking Bobby Bro. Frank Cagle and Ben Sears here. Ben smiled into the camera. The excitement here in Hotlanta is definitely hot tonight. Huh, Frank? About as hot as that barbecue we had last night, Ben, Frank smiled. And the excitement is surrounding the French Connection, Garland Louviere. Frank, Xavier Smith is 35 years old and has been on a bit of a losing streak of late. What do you think his biggest challenge tonight will be? Ben asked. Getting out of the ring alive, Frank smiled. No, seriously, Garland's a younger man. His speed has been the key to his success, and I think it'll play a key factor in tonight's bout. Go on home, Max, Xavier said as the two waited in the dressing room. Get in a cab, go to the airport, and go home. Emily's waiting. Screw you, you little shit, Max spat. Tell me what to do. Who the hell you think you are? Max, after tonight, they aren't going to just give up, Xavier said, and continued to juggle the 5 ping-pong balls. Pick up the green one, Max ordered, and Xavier reached out and picked up the green ping-pong ball from the table. Give me the red one, Max ordered, and Xavier did. Now give me the other red one, Max ordered. Good. Now pick up the pink one. Pink's a good color for you, Max ordered. 30 minutes, a guy called out from the door. Screw you, go away, bitch, Max screamed, and the guy gave Max the finger. He turned to Xavier and pointed to the pink ball on the table. Xavier picked it up and put the green one down. Then he put the next green one down and picked up another red ball. He kept alternating colors, but always kept 5 balls in the air. 10 minutes, the guy called out and disappeared before Max could curse at him. Isn't this exciting? Bucky enthused and hugged Robert tightly as they sat and watched the presentation on the 70-inch television. Uh-huh, Robert sullenly said. Oh, don't be such a big baby, Bucky giggled. I tell you what, Garland told me. She leaned close, even though it was just the two of them in the house. Xavier's going to throw it in the 5th round, she confided. I got 100,000 on it, and when I win it, I'll give you some. Okay? No, Bucky, no, it's not okay, Robert yelled. God damn it. I'm in love with you, and you just run off screwing anybody's got a dick. How the hell you think that makes me feels, huh? Love? Bucky burst out laughing. I didn't know lawyers were even capable of love. Screw you, Robert spat and got up. Oh no, don't go, Bucky pouted and unzipped her jeans. Watching these things always makes me so hot and horny. She adopted a little girl voice. And if no one's here to play with my little putty, I'll have to play with it all alone, she lisped. I'm all hot, just thinking about it. I need you to pound me while the fight's on. Frank, you can feel the excitement in here. Building by the second, Ben said. That's right, Ben. We're just 2 minutes away. Can you hear the Zydeco music cranking up? Frank agreed. They're expecting the French Connection to connect solid with Xavier Smith and leave a heavy impression on him. Well, tonight he's made an impression on Atlanta, that's for sure, Ben agreed. I've never seen so many Mardi Gras beads since last Mardi Gras. Ah yes, Bourbon Street's the place to be on Mardi Gras, and tonight Atlanta's Convention Center is the place to be, Frank said. A thunderous roar went up as Garland Louviere and his entourage came walking down the aisle, his winning smile on full wattage. There were some cheers and quite a few boos as Xavier Smith and Max came down the aisle. Some of the girls from Big Daddy's got up from the 30th row seats and hugged the burly fighter and his scrawny trainer. He still brings them in, huh, Frank? Ben smiled as a smiling Xavier extricated himself from the girls and continued down to the ring. Well, he's still a good-looking man, Frank offered. Those little 304s, Bucky laughed as she lay across the coffee table, almost paying no attention to the sweating, grunting Robert as he thrust in and out of her. I am sorry, Garland laughed as Xavier climbed into the ring. I should have let you go first. Age before beauty. Oh, that's all right, Xavier said in perfect French. I nothing but rudeness from an ill-bred scum-sucker like you. The referee and Garland's trainer pushed Garland back to his corner. Looks like Garland ready to get this fight started right away, Ben commented, smiling into the camera. What did you say to him? Max asked. Xavier told him, and Max shook his head and patted Xavier on the shoulder. Didn't know you spoke French, Max said. Didn't know he did either, Xavier smiled. So where'd you learn it? Max asked. Max, language was my major in college, remember? Garland was not smiling as the introductions were made and glared hotly at Xavier as Xavier came out to listen to the referee give the instructions. I drilled your wife, Garland hissed. Yeah? She tell you her boyfriend gave her AIDS? Xavier asked in French and smiled as Garland's mouth opened in shock. Nikita watched from his office in Big Daddy's, intently staring at Xavier's actions. Go, go. You are driving me crazy, Nikita snarled at Marcus. The bell rung and Xavier charged Garland. The juggling had served two purposes. His hand-eye coordination was honed to razor-sharp precision. His speed had improved vastly as well. His fist was little more than blurs as he pummeled Garland's handsome face. "He's killing him." Bucky screamed and laughed as she orgasmed. "Look at this shit. He's killing him. He is killing him," Nikita screamed at the television. "Right?" Max laughed. "He's killing him." "Frank, I don't think Garland's speed is the issue right now," Ben said as they watched the savage pounding Garland was receiving. 46 seconds into the fight, the referee shoved Xavier into a neutral corner, then turned to see Garland collapse to the canvas. "1," he called out, unheard over the screaming of the crowd. "2." And the entire crowd was on its feet, screaming. The crowd pushed up to the ring, craning their necks to see the paramedics working on Garland. Xavier and Max calmly walked from the ring after the referee had hoisted Xavier's hand in the symbolic gesture of victory. "Ben, he's not moving and now the paramedics are performing CPR," Frank commented. Xavier ducked into the men's bathroom and dug the duffel bag from the trash barrel. Marcus walked into the dressing room to wait for Xavier and his unfortunate trainer. Xavier walked out the front door of the convention center and got into a cab. A minute later, Max walked out and climbed into the back of a second cab. "Man, what happened in there?" the cab driver asked Xavier after Xavier had given him the address. "I heard on the radio it was a bloodbath. They're still working on the sucker." "Man, I don't know," Xavier complained. "I had to take a piss, come back and I can't even get to my seat. Everybody's all up around the ring." "So, Garland killed the old sucker, huh?" "No," the cab driver said. "They said it was unbelievable. Bell rings and Xavier's just pounding away at Garland. Less than a minute, they said." "Ah, man, you are kidding me," Xavier screamed. "Shitty prostrate medication." "Yeah, my old man had that shit. It's rough," the cab driver sympathized. Bucky urged Robert to keep drilling her as she watched them trying to revive Garland. "I bet he's dead," she laughed excitedly. "Been like 20 minutes, he ain't moved." She screamed as the front door fell off the hinges and 4 men strolled in. What happened here would go down in history as a savage act. Garland Louviere was pronounced dead upon arrival at Northside Hospital. Bobby Bro was approached by ESPN to produce a compilation of the footage he had on Garland's humble beginnings in Baylor Lake, Louisiana to his first fight, to his death. Nikita Slovak and Marcus entered the living room of Nikita's Buckhead condominium. Marcus reached for his 9mm and screamed as the .22 caliber bullets struck his hand. Xavier Smith sat and smiled as he squeezed off another shot, hitting Marcus in the knee. A third shot hit him in the other knee and Marcus rolled on the ground, moaning. The silencer had made the shots little more than burps. "Hi Nikita, been waiting for you," Xavier smiled. Nikita did not answer. His blood was boiling mad as Xavier sat in his favorite leather recliner. In front of Xavier was Romany, Nikita's precious 19-year-old daughter. Romany was stark naked, except for the duct tape around her waist and around her neck. Her hands were bound to her neck by the duct tape. "Daddy, please," Romany whispered, terrified. "It is lucky for you, and lucky for your daughter that I shot Mr. Marcus before he could shoot me," Xavier said in perfect Russian and shoved Romany to the side. Nikita's blood turned from white-hot to ice-cold. Xavier had a sawed-off, double-barreled shotgun taped to Romany's back, both triggers taped back. His thumb rested on the hammers. "My thumb slips off. Your precious little girl gets blown in half," Xavier continued in perfect Russian. "Do we understand each other?" "Daddy," Romany begged, tears sliding down her cheeks. Yes, we understand each other," Nikita said, defeated. "So, how'd it go with Bucky?" Xavier smiled. "She is..." Nikita hesitated. "I think I have to sneeze," Xavier warned. "You might want to hurry up." "She is dead," Nikita confessed and tensed up, waiting for the roar that was sure to come. "I already knew as much," Xavier said. "By the way, the 3 men you sent to Max's? Next time send more, okay?" "Yes?" Nikita asked. "He was actually kind of pissed off you only sent 3, Xavier said. "Kind of took it as an insult." My son Joseph?" Nikita asked. "He was one of the 3. All 3 were beaten to death," Xavier said calmly. "No, that is not possible," Nikita moaned. "Like I said, next time send more. They might have had a chance," Xavier said and put the pistol into his lap. "My son, my little Joseph," Nikita sobbed. "Damn, but your daughter has a fine one," Xavier said. Nikita's head snapped up and he glared at Xavier. "And that woman is super sweet," Xavier said and took a sip of scotch and smiled at Nadia's glaring face. "How many guys you think she's had service that glory hole, huh?" Xavier asked and pointed to the dark curls, smiling at Nikita. "Huh, Nikita? Think she's let it slam it a few times? Or Marcus there? I think he's tapped this manful. Daddy, I am not. I'm still a... Romany said. And these tits, huh? A little small, but they're sweet, huh? Xavier said, and cupped one of Romany's small breasts. Please, please don't, Romany begged Xavier. So pretty, Xavier said. That nice dark hair, so curly, them big green eyes. Where'd she get them green eyes? Your eyes are shit brown, Nikita, and her mama. She's got shit brown eyes too. Nikita clenched his jaw tightly, and his hands clenched and unclenched. Xavier took another sip of the scotch and smiled at Nikita. And those nice pouty lips, but they look so good wrapped around my Johnny. What you think, Nikita? Xavier went on. Your wife. Nikita sneered. She begged for her life. She offered to screw all of us. She offered to take us to you. Sounds like her. Xavier nodded and sipped the scotch again. She was cursing your name as I shot her, Nikita said. Daddy, Romany said, shocked. I put 2 bullets into her, one in the heart and one in the head, Nikita went on. Wow, you were able to shoot her in the heart? Good shot. Xavier smiled and finished the scotch. I didn't know anyone could find it. Yes, she cursed your name, cursed your mother and your father. Nikita went on, grinning at the memory of it. You think you a big gangsta? Well, you just got hit to the bigger gangsta, Xavier screamed. I think we've heard enough, Agent Brown said as he entered the room and showed his badge to Nikita. FBI. Thanks for confessing, Xavier said. Backs up what we already had on my surveillance tapes. Nikita stumbled forward as Xavier stood up and showed Nikita both of his hands. See, Nikita, I had surveillance cameras put in last year when that crazy woman was running around telling everyone she was my wife, Xavier said. Watched you kill Bucky and her boyfriend in glorious living color. The shotgun, Nikita stammered. Not loaded, Xavier admitted. Your daughter, she is innocent. Why would I hurt her? You have the right to remain silent, Agent Brown was telling Nikita as he handcuffed him. I will make sure you never draw an unafraid breath, Nikita promised. Good luck with that, Xavier smiled. But I will make it easy for you. I'm taking my winnings and moving back to my mother's home in Costa del Sol, in Panama. Bail was denied and Nikita and 7 of his men, including his son Joseph, sat and cooled their heels. Nikita was quite relieved to see that his son was actually still alive. Yeah, we walked in and before I could even say anything, there's 15 cops all around us, and this crazy son of a bitch cursing and spitting at us, Joseph said. I was told that you had been killed, Nikita said. That crazy scumsucker. He would have tried, Joseph admitted. The cops hadn't been there. He would have tried. Abe Milner, Nikita's lawyer, took the message from Nikita to George. George read the cryptic message, nodded his head once, and walked away. Abe shivered. The burly man scared him. Romany gasped. Her father looked horrible. His skin was actually gray, sagging. Nikita was discovering that his connections did not help him in jail. They hurt him. Twice now, he had to kill 2 other inmates that had tried to kill him as part of their initiation into jailhouse gangs. And each time, the gangs promised revenge for their fallen brother. He talked with his daughter, the light of his life. She was as pretty as her mother had been at that age, and as innocent. Her mother, once she found out where their immense wealth was coming from, had left him. She had returned to their native Russia. The sting of losing his wife had been taken out when Nikita married the first brown-eyed girl that had smiled at him. It is not good in here, he admitted. Mr. Milner, he's going to get you out, right? She asked. My sweet little princess, Nikita smiled. You still believe, don't you? You still believe in fairy tales, and happily ever after. George was silent as the bus rumbled through the mountain range. The filthy man next to him tried several times to engage him in conversation, and George ignored him. This man, he is a rude American, the man said to his friend behind him. George punched the man, stifling the laughter in the man's throat. You are the rude one, George told the groaning man. I wish my privacy, but do you respect that? No, you don't. Senor Smith, Rosa said as she ran to his hacienda. There is an American asking for you. He is showing many American dollars and saying it is reward because you are wanted criminal in America. Fine, fine, I will see him, Xavier said. Bring him here. Rosa asked. No, no, I will come to him, Xavier said. George sat in the small cafe and waited. Put your hands on the table where I can see them, Xavier said as he stood behind George. George slowly put his hands on the table. The muzzle of the shotgun left no doubt in his mind that Xavier had gotten the draw on him. Xavier sat down behind George, never moving the barrel of the shotgun from the back of George's head. "Is it not bad enough that you have to come and disturb my peace and tranquility?" Xavier asked. "But you have to tell my friends, my family, that I am a criminal? You know that I am no criminal." "Nikita says hi," George said. "Nikita is of no importance to me," Xavier said. "Tell him that he is a small man that bears no importance to me. And I will make sure you arrive safely to the airport, Miguel Dominguez," Rosa's father said. "As will I," Juan Dominguez said. George glumly looked at the 5 men and their shotguns. "Well, I guess I'm going back to the airport," he said and moved to stand up. "Not so fast," Xavier said. "I am not taking any chances that you might hurt my friends. You are a dangerous man with no morals." "Strip?" Rosa stifled her giggles with her hand as the burly man slowly removed his clothing. He paused when he was standing in boxer shorts, but Xavier used the barrel of his gun to pull the waistband down. George sighed and pulled the underwear off. Rosa laughed out loud at the sight of George's flaccid tool. "Rosa," Miguel ordered his 20-year-old daughter, "go away." "Oh, come on, father," Rosa laughed. "I do not want to miss any of this." "You will go blind if you look at it too long." Xavier smiled and Rosa collapsed in helpless laughter. "I do speak Spanish," George sullenly said. "I can understand you." "Oh, good," Xavier said. "Then understand this. These men will take you to the airport. You will get on the airplane and leave our country. If you ever return, we will kill you. Do you understand?" "Yes," George said. He sat in the back of the car between 2 men that never moved their shotguns from his belly. In the front, 1 man sat facing the rear, his shotgun trained on George's head. A 4th man drove the car, while the 5th man gave directions. "Okay, the airport is just around the bend," Miguel said. "Get out and start walking." But I am naked," George protested. "And if you do not get out, you will be naked and dead," Miguel shrugged. "Your choice." George got out of the car, hands over his genitals. Miguel smiled and tossed the man's clothing into a mud puddle. The car drove away rapidly in reverse. Xavier enjoyed the simple life of a fisherman. The work was hard, which suited him physically. He had to pay attention to everything around him, beneath him and above him, and that suited him mentally. He had no need for the money, but he did enjoy buying his own dinner with the money he earned that day. Often, he would buy everyone's dinner, so he had many friends. At night, he read voraciously. The postmaster often grumbled at him that Xavier would drive him to early retirement. "My back, it cannot take all these heavy books," he grumbled. Costa del Sol enjoyed the new library Xavier quietly commissioned, and the postmaster grumbled even more as boxes and boxes of books arrived. Books in many different languages filled the shelf, and Xavier held a contest. Any child that could finish a book in French and do a written and an oral book report on the book would get $100. "Any child under the age of 21 years, he said. Rosa Dominguez proudly stood in the front of the church and gave her oral report on the Hunchback of Notre Dame. Her French was faltering. She often confused the verb tense, but Xavier stood and applauded her report and handed her the $100 bill. "She is a good daughter," the people said when she tearfully, happily handed Miguel the $100 bill. "I am old," Nikita said wearily to Romani. "It is not worth it." Romani listened, tears in her eyes, as the once proud Nikita sobbed and told her of Joseph's death behind the prison walls. He'd been stabbed to death as he lay sleeping. She listened intently and promised to carry out Nikita's last wishes. "Promise me, my child," he begged. "Promise, so that I may go in peace." "I do, Daddy," she promised. "And my daughter?" he asked. "Yes, Daddy?" Romani asked. "Please, please, never come here again," he said. He'd had more than one prisoner come up to him and promise him that they would be looking Romani up when they got out. They promised that it would not be a friendly social visit, but that they would enjoy it tremendously. "I screw her every hole," one brawny man promised. "Then I make her clean off my Johnny with her tongue. She cries, I kill her." Nikita beat him to death with a chair. "I go," Rosa said, and sprinted out the door of the cafe before Miguel could stop her. "My daughter, she has love for Senor Smith," Miguel smiled. Sit. You want beer? I also have the Coca-Cola." "The Coca-Cola, please," Romani asked. "Senor Smith," Rosa called out as she ran. "Yes, senorita?" Xavier smiled as he sat on the dock, mending a net that a swordfish had torn. "There is a woman, an American, at the cafe. She is looking for you," Rosa gasped, out of breath from the run. "Dark hair, but not as dark as yours?" "Curly?" Xavier asked. "Green eyes." "You know her?" Rosa asked. eyes narrowed in jealousy. I do. I know her very well, Xavier smiled. I have been expecting her. Many men came in, pretending to have business with Miguel, but they did not take their eyes from the pale beauty that sat and waited for Xavier. My daughter, she is available, Miguel reminded the more affluent of the curious visitors. Hardworking, honest, she would make you happy. Is there somewhere more private? Romany asked after the 10th male came in and stared intently at her. No, I am sorry, Miguel apologized. You would think that they have never seen a female before. Not one as beautiful as you, Xavier said as he entered the cafe. My daddy, Romany said, flustered as she looked at the handsome man. She remembered the man that held a shotgun to her head and forced her to remove her clothing. Until that night, she'd had a suspicion that Daddy was involved in some slightly illegal activity. The men that hung around the condominium were a bit rough, a bit uncouth, but the harsh treatment of Xavier Smith had been quite a shock. Then he taped a gun to her, and she knew beyond a doubt that Daddy was involved in some dangerous dealings with some dangerous people. Then he'd had the gall to tell Daddy that she was a loose woman that slept around. Worse yet, he'd put his large hands on her. Standing in front of her, easy smile on his handsome face, the dangerous man seemed to be a lifetime ago. My daddy says it is over, she finally said, lowering her eyes so that she would not be distracted. He says he has no more grudge with you. That is good, Xavier smiled and sat down. Rosa slapped his beer on the table hard and waited. Xavier smiled and gave her a $5 bill. Rosa looked over at Romany, then back at Xavier. She has a tongue. Ask her. Don't ask me, Xavier smiled. Does Senorita want another Coca-Cola? Rosa asked in a surly tone. No, thank you, Romany said, still not looking at Xavier. He is old. He is tired, Romany went on. It is bound to happen to all of us, Xavier shrugged. Rosa, Miguel snapped, and Rosa sullenly slunk away from the table, leaving the two Americans alone. Romany sipped her warm cola and Xavier guzzled the beer. Still, she would not look up at him. He asks that you forgive him so he can die in peace, Romany said. Tell your father I have already forgiven him, Xavier said and stood up. I forgave him the moment my feet touched my native soil here. Thank you, Romany said. Sincerely, but I need for you to forgive me, Xavier said. In order to distract your father, I said some things about you. They were ugly things, hurtful things, and I am sorry for saying those things. She looked up at him, and he smiled. A faint blush began to spread, and she looked back down at the tabletop. I'm getting ready to take my boat out. I had to do some repairs to the engine, Xavier said. Come with me. Rosa stamped her foot. She had been hinting to the man that she wanted to go out on his boat. The moment they were out on the open water, she would pull her dress over her head and bare her body to his gaze. Then, surely then, he would no longer be able to resist her. Then as soon as Xavier made a woman out of her, she would tell her father, and he would demand that Xavier make right the wrong. He would be forced to marry her, but she would make sure he never regretted it. I can't swim, Romany admitted. I will make sure you wear a life jacket, Xavier said and held out his hand for her. Nikita smiled as he read the letter from his daughter. She was happy, truly happy in Costa del Sol. The enclosed picture showed her, belly already growing large as she and her husband stood in front of his fishing boat, named after Xavier's father, John Smith. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.